Good afternoon. I'm Arnold Shuchat with the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver. I'm a realtor in Vancouver, and I'm down in San Diego at the National Association of Realtor Convention. And I'm with Ishay Grinberg of RentalBeast.
That's right.
And I'm actually interviewing some of the companies, as many as I can, with Reach Canada. For those of you that don't know, Reach is a subsidiary of the American venture capital company set up by National Association of Realtors to try to go and seek out new worlds of property tech where we haven't gone before. It was a way to try to make the realtor's life, keep the realtor at the center of the conversation in an evolving consumer marketplace and an evolving technology marketplace. And Ishay is one of the, he's in the class of 21, 22. He's probably, who knows where he's going to come out in the class, but it looks like it's successful. And I just wanted to let everybody know what types of things we're looking at and what Reach does. So Ishay, tell us about your company, RentalBeast.
Thank you, Arnold. Yeah, so first off, I'm Ishay, founder and CEO of RentalBeast. I grew up in the industry as a real estate agent myself and managed two brokerage firms, one in New York City and then one in Massachusetts, where we're based in Boston. And the simple concept behind RentalBeast is that as real estate professionals, I always viewed our job as we help people find a place to live. As it so happens, half of the population in most markets or thereabouts rents their home or their apartment versus owning their home. But the MLSs and the associations at large have never done a great job in capturing all the rental inventory that exists in the marketplace, or really providing real estate agents and professionals with the necessary tools to properly help the renting population. So RentalBeast, in a nutshell, built a rental MLS. We go and we capture, ideally, 100% of all the rental inventory in any market we exist in.
Is that done with AI? How are you capturing?
I wish.
Manual?
It's a combination of a ton of technology and a lot of manpower. We have about 100 people on staff solely dedicated to capturing and maintaining the rental inventory. And we have tens of millions of dollars invested in the technology side to facilitate finding and ingesting and maintaining the same inventory. But it's not...
As an example, like Craigslist, Trovit, all these other, like Airbnb, you name it, does it go out using technology to find that and incorporate those too, or are there limit?
No, so we do not, very good question, we do not scrape data that is public and readily available. It has to come to us directly from the owner or the property manager. And the reason is because we've built this database just like an MLS. And what I mean by that is the purpose of each property that comes into our system is so that when an agent looks at it, they have all the information they need to physically visit the property, sign a lease on that property, and get a commission paid. And if we only scraped Craigslist or Trovit or any one of these sites, number one, a lot of the information is incredibly inaccurate or outdated, or in some cases never existed at all, fully fabricated. So it's not really at that high of a quality, but also the amount of information that you get from these websites on an individual property basis is fairly superficial, because the consumer-facing sites are there to generate a lead versus to truly help somebody rent, sign a lease, and move in.
That was one of the things I worry about, as with my association, we worry about the three pillars of agency. Agent putting the data in so it's reliable. So who puts the data in?
Well, it depends. There are three distinct layers to the database. About 20% of the data is coming from what we call property, multifamily owners and operators. So these are larger institutional investors that own usually 10,000 plus doors in multiple regions or nationally or internationally.
That was the low-hanging fruit because they're going to get it done right. And they don't. And once they do it once, unless there's a reno.
Correct. And they all have deployed some sort of property management software that they're using. So I don't know if you've heard of companies like Yardi or RealPage or Entrata or Appfolio and so on. So we integrate with all of them. And one of the byproducts we get from these pieces of software is dynamic access to all these vacancies. That's about 20% of the inventory. 30% comes from much smaller management companies that will be only local. So only Vancouver management companies, for example. And they usually have 50 to 10,000 doors, and it's a total mishmash of how they maintain and manage their own inventory. It could be Word documents or PDFs or Excel spreadsheets or one-off WordPress websites, or often nothing at all, just yard signs, or a bronze plaque on a building. So we spend considerable amount of time and resources at mapping and building a sheet with all the companies in that category in each individual market. And over the past decade, we've built the necessary technology to ingest their information, which is manual and time consuming. And once it's in our system, we have a back-end system that allows us to maintain those listings super efficiently.
Okay, so if you were to go into a new market, say Vancouver, I look at this through a Vancouver lens. What is there, a 0.1% or vacancy rate? And the average landlord saying, well, we don't need anybody. We just have to say, as soon as it's available, someone's going to pick it up. In fact, the tenants can move out because they're not going to be held to a lease because there's no damage if they leave the contract because someone will be picking up right away. We don't really need to pay anybody a commission. How does that situation play into?
So we exist in 25 markets, and in almost every single one of these markets, there is a similar market dynamic situations to what you have in Vancouver, whereas there is significantly more demand for rentals than available supply. Despite that, and I'm a landlord and a real estate investor myself, and I'm in the Boston market, similar situation. When I have a vacancy, doesn't require a ton of effort. However, working through the local MLS, when I have a vacancy, I can put it on Craigslist or I can put a sign in the yard, but what ends up happening is I get an incredible amount of phone calls because of the demand. Then I have to conduct those tours and show the property myself. Once a tenant says they're interested, I have to process and screen that applicant. Then I have to put the lease documentation myself. And the reality is that working through the MLS negates my need to do any of those things because the agent takes on that work. They screen the tenants in advance. They put the lease documentation together. And I end up 99 out of 100 times getting a far better quality tenant than someone that was bargain hunting on Craigslist.
So the problem is solved by buy-in from the owners of the property because that simplifies things. I'm not sure that I don't do much renting myself. It's time consuming. There's no money in it compared to the sale, right? And I'm sure we actually have MLS up and running. There is rental property, but I don't think a fraction of the inventory in the city is going in. Certainly hasn't been organized and curated with property owners. It's one-offs. If someone says rent my property, I have get a realtor and they'll pay 1 month's rent.
Right.
But what you're telling me from your experience, if you're at it for 10 years, is regardless of the low vacancy rate, at some point the professionals, because there's always going to be somebody trying to save buck on commission, will find this way more useful than the 1 month or 2 months rent that they're going to sacrifice or pay.
And the optionality we provide them is if you own the rental property, we don't require you to give us an exclusive. So if you want to continue to market that by whatever means you want, you can continue to do that. All we ask is, we are going to put your listing in front of all the members of the local MLS, and if those agents procure a tenant that you decide you want to lease to because they're better or because they're the only option, at that point we want you to compensate the agents. So we get very little resistance on that. Mm-hmm. As far as the size of the opportunity...
That's certainly an objection point that will come up every time until the guys work with the system a few times and you realize how much more convenient it is.
Yeah, and there is no risk for them up front. So if they choose to work with the system and try it out and they end up securing a tenant outside of it, they're not on the hook for anything.
All right, so now let's talk about the cool part. That's the hard work.
Yeah.
That's all the background, that's years and years. The cool part is, and we talked about this before, I'm going to just pull a number out of the air. I'm going to say 30%. 30% of X% of renters now, between a certain demographic, might likely become owners in 5 years.
Yeah,
right?
That's almost right on the button.
So let's assume you're a starting realtor. You're a new realtor and you want to build your funnel. You can go to a lot of professional development courses and they're going to say, it's not about the transaction, the emphasis is about the relationship. And the sooner you get that through your head as a new realtor, the more long-term benefit. Although you have to pay short-term bills, but the better it is. You got to let things go and you got to focus on the relationship. So You've now helped the client, but you're probably going to get paid. You just won't get paid as much as if it's sold.
Correct.
And who are they going to go to when nobody else helped them? 3 years later or 5 years later, they're going to go back to the person who helped them the first time. I mean, you have to take responsibility of keeping in touch, but you've
Well, it's
got
actually part of the core tenets of our product and our platform is to take every renter that the agent works with and identifying the likelihood of that renter to become a home buyer. And we drastically increase the conversion and the lifetime value of that renter because 30% of the time, as you said, they do convert into a buy-side transaction, and the system helps you stay in touch with them.
Is there any intel in if they're painting and renoing, and I don't think they're moving?
Yeah, so I mean, the way we do it is every time a tenant lead comes in through the system, there's an automatic pre-qualification that gets sent to them. And one of the most basic things we do is we just ask that renter, hey, are you thinking about buying a place? And maybe not so shockingly, 40% of the time, the renter comes back and says, yes, I am. And then we follow that up with how interested are you on a scale of 1 to 10, and what is your household income, and when does your lease expire? And we start building a profile around this person to identify how valid of a potential buyer is this person. Second thing we do is the second someone runs a search for a rental, one of the basic things they'll input is their moving date, right? So I am looking for a property on December 1st. Usually leases last for 12 months. So if somebody is moving on a 12-month cycle from December 1st, they probably start thinking about when and what they need to do 3 or 6 months prior to that. So our system will remind the agent and that tenant, hey, you have a lease coming up in 3 months or in 6 months. Are you renewing it? You're looking for another rental. Are you now ready to buy? And we're now working on adding the actual borrowing power to each one of these tenants. So somebody comes in looking for a 2-bedroom in Vancouver for, I don't know, $1,300. We are going to attach a number and say that tenant seems like they can pre-qualify for a, just making it up, $400,000 mortgage. So once the agent gets their hand on this person, now they can have a conversation and say, look, sure, through this database called RentalBeast, I can show you a ton of 2 bedrooms for your price range, but guess what? I can also show you all these for sale properties, and your mortgage payment is going to be identical. So those are just some of the things we do to really enhance the conversion.
Well, one of the things I worry about with all the agreements that we just say we accept, is where that data is going. So I worry about, every organization out there that's trying to do something for realtors, whether it's Dropbox or iCloud or Apple, is trying to wrap their hands, and whether it's the Bank of Nova Scotia or the Bank of Montreal, they're trying to wrap their hands against the client, and eventually the mortgage broker, if it's a mortgage broker, doesn't get the renewal because they'll be selling them credit cards and everything else they can do once they got them in the system and pumping them for loans and whatever it is that they do. That data that comes through your system that shows that somebody wants to buy, who do you feed it to, and who owns the data? Who's getting the benefit of the data? Is it the realtor that put them in the system?
So if the realtor puts the data in the system, the realtor owns the data.
No, I mean, like they got a tenant,
Yep.
they brought someone in and they used the system.
Yeah.
Now they put a tenant in there, so now
They own the
you
data.
find
It's
out
their account.
But you find out that through whatever, because if you've asked and whatever, that the tenant wants to move, or he's going to be on that 30%.
Yeah.
What do you do with that information?
The realtor owns the data. The system will take certain steps to help that realtor create that conversion, but we don't resell that data. It's the realtor that owns that
That's
data.
great. So we're not competing.
No, and as a matter of fact, I was at the Inman conference. I don't know if you were there last week in Vegas.
No.
And one of my biggest takeaways from that conference was you have companies like Rocket Mortgage, it's a very big, probably the biggest lender in the United States, Zillow, okay, another big company, and they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars, to your point, per month, primarily on establishing and building the relationship between the consumer
And them.
and them. And they're trying to get to the consumer before they make a relationship and a connection with a local real estate professional. Because they know that once that happens, that real estate agent likely has their own mortgage person and likely has their own, sort of...
Everybody wants to be the Dropbox of the transaction.
That's right.
Or the iCloud of the transaction.
So how do you compete against companies spending hundreds of millions of dollars that want your customers? And in our opinion, building a relationship with that exact core customer a month, a year, 2 years before they're buying while they're still renting is not only
Great
very
business.
fruitful,
Yeah.
it's probably the most cost-efficient way of building your sales pipeline. What's the dollar amount of available leasing commissions to real estate agents annually in Canada?
Oh, it's got to be a huge number.
Yeah, it's going to be $2.5 billion.
It's got to be a huge number because they want them rented. I don't think there's the big guys are not going to hold up a piece of real estate
Right.
for a commission.
And the small guys are they don't even have the choice to have it held up. So the number is $2.49 billion exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very large commission pocket that is now effectively not available through the MLS system. And that's our mission. It's bring those commission opportunities and the inventory and allow folks to convert these renters into home buyers.
So to clarify here, so I may be a director at the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver. I'm not representing the board in our discussion here, and I can't bind anybody. But what's interesting, and putting that hat on for a second,
Yep.
In commercial MLS has suffered through the fragmentation of the market because you have LoopNet and you have every brokerage putting their own website, and the signs get left. The equivalent of the real estate signs get left on the listing forever. People call up, oh, that's been dead. So it's not, the rules of the game are it's like the Wild West. The listing stays live long because you never know if someone else wants another one. What are you calling? Oh, we got another building somewhere else.
Yeah.
And commercial MLS has suffered. I don't know that it handles 15% of the market now, maybe. So we wouldn't want MLS to go the same way commercial MLS. So by taking the rent, there's a couple of benefits here I see. Never mind the actual product. Just in terms of keeping the realtor front and central,
right,
and using our MLS, our MLS provider might be Paragon or as a software, right? But by incorporating all those listings, and if it's $2.5 billion and we represent 400 and 500 million in, say, British Columbia, well, by bringing $500 million of listings into the platform and the attendant traffic through the platform, we confirm and re-legitimize our platform, our realtor platform, as the place to go shopping for real estate. Whereas commercial MLS, it's so tough to take a mandate because I can check there, then I have to check somewhere else, and I have to check LoopNet, and it's just you can't possibly provide the same value to a client who can trip over another real estate site somewhere and find a listing and say, what about that? And you're on your own, basically, right? So consolidating it's very interesting. There's a story in my family, and I may cut this, but there's a piece of land behind the building that Grandpa owned, right? And it's 10 cents a foot, and everybody knows a piece of property for 10 cents a foot. And no, we're not taking it. We're not in that business. And you could say you're not in the rental business, but when you step back from what you do every day, say, you know what? I'm in the real estate question answering business. Take the broadest approach. I'm in the solutions business of real estate matters where consumers are concerned. And where are they going to go to find the answer? So you take the biggest tent you possibly can, funnel them in there. I mean, it'd be like Airbnb saying, what do you want to do today? Rent, buy. Move over to the other page, but you came to the right place. Well, our MLS has got a really strong percentage, a high percentage of market, and adding $500 million worth of listings in there would certainly bump your SEO when you type in real estate ? Right?
Well, and that's in a nutshell why we partner with MLSs. MLSs have done an incredible job at becoming the source of truth, the place people go to when they want to figure out what is actually available for sale in my marketplace. And you identified the big gaping hole, which is it doesn't address the needs of almost half of the population. So by us working with the MLS, effectively makes the MLS that source of truth, the largest local marketplace.
And it sustains its lifespan. It trains, it educates the consumer, and it reinforces the consumer as the source of expertise and market knowledge, being that database and being the realtor-focused, curated data point.
That's right.
So you could be in effect, RentalBeast is a subcontractor to the real estate industry by curating the listings, but it feeds right into our value proposition.
Yeah, and like, you know, where I started is as a real estate agent, and I remember my first 3 months, I worked 8 days a week or 9 days a week. I forget how long weeks were. They seemed really long back then.
It's trouble.
And then I finally took me 3 months to get my first commission check, and it was for $180. And me personally, I somehow figured it out and made a career out of it. But we have so many agents that get started, or you know, the sales market takes a dip for whatever reason. The supply goes down, the interest rate goes up, and it's just hard to survive. And the ability to, I mean, every successful agent that I know, whether they're selling $10 million homes or, you know, $200,000 homes, they understand that this is a relationship business. And you're exactly right. For most agents, when they're thinking about their business, who is their target customer? The target customer goes something like this. I am interested in you if you are buying or selling a home, and I'm going to exaggerate for dramatic effect, but I am interested in you if you're buying or selling a home in the next 60 to 90 days in a 10-block radius from my office.
From my house. I don't have to get up.
And that universe is not only incredibly small, but every other real estate agent within a 5, 10, 20-mile radius is competing for that same exact person. So just imagine for a second, if instead of just focusing on that group of people, you said, I just help people find a place to live. And you were helping everybody that rents. And what happens with renters is when someone buys a house, because it's the largest investment most people make, almost always the buyer is going to tell you, I want to buy in this neighborhood. Sometimes it's as specific as I want to live on this street because of whatever, school district. Renters don't think that way. So a renter comes in and says, I want to be within a half hour to my new school or to my new job. So that means they're looking not just in a 10-mile radius, they might be looking at 10 different neighborhoods, right? So now, are you going to service them, knowing that they're going to buy in 6 months, buy in a year? And who are these renters? What's driving the sales market today? I mean, we're going to these conferences, and if I asked any agent out there, who is the largest group of home buyers today? Millennials. 40% of anyone buying a home in Canada is a millennial. If we look 3 years into the future, that's going to be 60 or 70% of everyone buying a home. Well, those people, those millennials, represent 65% of everyone renting.
Wow. Yeah, so you can't ignore it.
You could ignore it at your own risk.
You could. Yeah, I know, but you know, one of the things that we do, it reaches, you know, we look in the future.
Yeah.
We're focused in the future. I love that booth. You know, you could go around the room and you could see one company wants to be your SEO, the other one wants to be, you know, you do your signs, and it's like the one has closing gifts, and then you get to the reach booth in the middle, and it's looking at the second derivative. This is a second derivative already of demand. You might say it's the first, but it's looking out there.
I would say it's.
Yeah, you would say it's the first, but you know, it's got to come from somewhere. It's the driver of where it's coming from.
Right.
So you got to think ahead.
Yeah.
So I love that. Anyways, we're getting to the end of showtime here. I think they're actually pulling all the booths down. It's getting dark. The airport's probably filling up. People came from all over the continent. And I just want to thank you for taking the time, all over the world. I want to take, you know, those of you who don't know, National Association of Realtors is the largest trade organization in the world, and it's professional. So it's pretty cool. It's civilized. It was extremely well run. We had a concert outside our hotel last night. Yeah. And to be able to have some CEO time one-on-one for an interview is terrific. You know, it keeps me sharp, and it keeps me future focused for any association work I do, and that's where I like my head to be. So thank you very much for spending time.
You,
and I want to
thank you for everything you do.
All
for
the
your
best,
members.
and good luck.
Yeah.
I want to keep reading about you, and I look forward to working with your company as a mentor at Reach.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching.